Hey guys, it's Sharonda Lene, and welcome back to my podcast. In today's episode, I want to speak on brokenness and how an experience that I had when I was about 3 or 4 has kind of shaped my thinking to now at 38. My first experience with brokenness started with an event that was my pre-K graduation. I was about 4 years old, and I can recall my parents arguing in the bathroom, and I can't really remember what they were mad about. I just remember my mom saying to my dad that we were going to be late to this graduation. My dad came home late and we were waiting for him, and he wouldn't tell my mom where he was. My mom was pissed. My mom told my dad that we were going to be late, so we were going to have to leave him so he could get dressed. And so my dad drove by himself. I had a speaking part in the ceremony. And, it was just, we got to go. So I put on my cap and gown, got in the car, and I got in the line, and, I had some lines I needed to say, and I said my line, and people were clapping for me. And at the end of the line, I was supposed to say my name, but of course they didn't know that. So they started clapping, and I was so thrown off and upset that I just sat down. But I never saw my dad. I looked in the back of the building and I never saw, him come inside. So after the ceremony is over, then now I can't find my mom, and I'm looking for her. And then my dad pops in the door. And as he pops in the door, he's trying to give me a hug and tell me congratulations. But I was just so angry because, I didn't see him. And so it was he missed it. He wasn't here. And my aunt was a teacher at the facility, so she came around the corner. She's like, stop acting like that with your dad. He's your dad. He loves you. Why are you acting like that? And so my dad was just like, no, just let her go find her mom. Let her go find her mom. And as I sit here now thinking, it's I wonder if he knew why I was really upset. I wonder if he thought, I was upset about the argument between him and my mom. But that wasn't it. I never saw him come inside. It was my first big event, and in my mind, he missed it. My faith in him was broken at that point. He promised that he would be there, and I never saw him. My 4-year-old mind, believes he didn't show up. My 38-year-old mind says, girl, it was crowded. It was wall to wall people. He, just couldn't get in. But my 38-year-old mind now also feels like if he cared, he would have come home on time, and we would have driven together to the event and pretended to be happy like they always did. My setup to my brokenness started way before I really even knew how to read a chapter book. I feel like my brokenness was handed to me on a silver platter. My mom, she didn't grow up with her parents. Her parents were gone. Her mom, unfortunately, ended up in a mental facility when my mom was only 3, and she never met her father. And she ended up living with her older sister and her family. And so my mom's brokenness came from not really knowing where she came from. Even though she was living with family, they weren't her parents. They took care of her, but they weren't her parents. She grew up feeling like an orphan with no sense of identity. So her brokenness was there. With my father, his father died when he was young. And so he had no male figure other than his older brothers who lived in another state, And unfortunately, someone who was a trusted individual in the community preyed upon my father and other boys in that community and began touching him inappropriately. And so that's where my father's brokenness started. And then here these two people they find each other and get married, start a family, what most people think they should do. But they didn't work out their issues. They didn't get to the root of their brokenness. So they passed it on to me. Now, my relationship with my parents was very rocky throughout my childhood and my adolescence and my teenage years and the beginning of my 20s. But in the beginning of my 20s, it was just like, I can't live like this anymore. The two people that brought me into this world hurt me. Maybe not on purpose, but nonetheless, their brokenness hurt me. Because it was their inability at that particular time to explore their issues and heal and give their healed self to me as parents. They gave the brokenness to me. So I was able to have a conversation with them. I was around 24 at the time, just about how their parenting skills, life skills affected me as a kid. And I was able to let them know that, no, you were not the parents that I needed. Yes, you provided a home. Yes, my necessities were there and some of my wants were there. But the emotional support that I needed, there was a void there. Now, having this conversation with my dad, he was very forthcoming about his brokenness in that time. And so I was able to look at him as a human being, not just my father at that point. I saw his heart. I saw his struggles. I saw his pain. I saw his triumph. And so I gained respect for him, for being able to open up to me and talk about his life and his childhood. And from that point on, it was just like, wow, this is my daddy. He's in tune with me. He listens. He reaches out. He calls. He beats me calling. Whereas as a kid, he had issues. So he just couldn't be there. He just couldn't be there. There will be times where he was just in the best mood. And then there were times he was mad at the world. And he would take it out on forever. And so we would just be having a good moment, and then I'll ask him a question, and as if he, saw flames and the house was on fire and I was the enemy. And he would be short, and if I'd ask him something he was uncomfortable with, like, he would be snippy, and so of course it would be like, okay, I'm not gonna ask him anything. I'll play small. But after having that conversation with him, it all went away. All the anger I felt, all the abandonment I felt for times where he said he was coming, he never showed up. And times he said we were going to do something and we never did it. Just having that hope, just hanging on his every word, and being disappointed time and time again. It's as if it vanished. And I thank God that I was able to have that conversation with him and mend things with him before he left this earth. And now having a conversation with my mom was a little on the defensive. And it took some time before she was able to hear me and kind of take in what I was saying and not look at it as if I was pointing a finger at her, because that's not what it was. And I know sometimes it's hard to accept the truth about how we make others feel. And so we'll shut them down or shut them out and kind of, say, well, you done this or you done that. And you're not giving the person the opportunity to just feel their feelings and let them have what they need to say. If you don't agree with someone else, it doesn't make their feelings invalid. And we should never make someone's feelings invalid. We should never make someone feel like they're invalid because we don't agree or we can't accept what it is that they're saying at that time. But, like I said, it took a while for my mom to come around to hear my heart. But once she did, it's like the relationship we have now, it's like that other stuff, none of it ever happened. Of course, we have our little rifts at times because that, headstrong mother-daughter dynamic. But the relationship we have now, we are like extremely close. That's my heart. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But I feel had I not had those experiences and had they not had those experiences, we might have been different people. But on the flip side of that, I like who I am. I like the way my mind works. Even with the bouts of anxiety, it's still me. I will be forever growing, forever changing. I will always be a student of life as long as I have breath, in my body. And because I have had brokenness, unfortunately, some bad traits have been passed down, have been learned from being broken, that maybe I tend to not listen with my whole heart, not fully understand where someone else is coming from. But each day that I have, I'll grow and become better and better and better and better until the old me is just, washed away. But brokenness got me here. But it's not where I plan on staying. It's not where I need to stay. It's not my home. I'm not comfortable with it. So each day I read an article, listen to a podcast, follow someone on YouTube with insightful wisdom. I have to put it inside and become whole. So if you're listening and you don't really know where to start, just think of who you want to put out in the world. Do you want your brokenness to drive you to be offended all the time? Do you want your brokenness to drive you to not trust? Do you want your brokenness to drive you to be angry? Do you want your brokenness to drive you to have low self-esteem or low self-worth and be low-hanging fruit? Or do you want to use it as competition of being better than the day before because you were broken? So you have to be intentional about your thought process. You have to be intentional about changing. You have to be intentional about being a better version of yourself every single day. Not perfect, but recognizing like, okay, let me take self-evaluation of my day. Did I say things that I could stand by? Did I say things that I don't mind being repeated? Would I be okay if someone heard the conversation that I'm having with myself or with the people that I love? Would I be okay with someone following me home, seeing the other side of me that I may not show to the world on a daily basis? Because when we present ourselves to the world, we're polished. We're trying our very best to not necessarily put on a show, but we're trying our very best to not mess up. We're trying our best to watch our words. We're trying our best to not offend anybody, So why can't we do that in every aspect of our lives? We can't be neglectful of our close relationships, thinking maybe, oh, they love me, they'll just, hang around. That's not true. That's not true, and it's not fair. It's not fair. So brokenness can put you in a place that sometimes you feel like you can't bounce back from. But that's a lie. You can bounce back from anything. I hope that this encourages you to take inventory. Take inventory of the relationships that you have with yourself first, and then others. Be mindful of what you put out. It is indicative of who you are. But don't stay in brokenness and let it consume you. You deserve better. You are better. You can do better. Find something that motivates you to grow. Find something that pushes you to greatness. But deal with yourself. Have an honest conversation with yourself of ways that you can be better. I know sometimes we feel like there's no one there to hear us. No one understands. That's not true. We are not an island. We need people. So having a strong support system, people that will hold you accountable when you're doing wrong and correcting you when you're doing wrong is necessary. Find the balance in your life. Find something that you can work towards. Don't put yourself on the back burner. You are important. Your brokenness does not have to define you. You will win. As always, this is Shervonda Lene. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. See you in the next episode.